another episode of How to Paint Like a Feminist. I'd like to go ahead and open up today's episode with a way that we haven't really gone before, and that's to go ahead and start with a little prayer. So if you could just, if you're watching here, just bow your head and let's go ahead and do this together. Dear non-gendered Heavenly Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, or whatever gender he identifies as or she identifies as, or non-sexual, asexual, pansexual being that does or does not exist identifies as or chooses not to identify as. I forgot what I was going to pray about, but amen and a women and a moron. And if this is your first time joining us, I'd like to invite you to pull up a chair that somebody probably stole out of the Capitol building and go ahead and have a little sit-a-roo while we go ahead and learn how to paint like a protester today. This episode is brought to you by Big Daddy Unlimited. Make sure you sign up with the link down below. Using code Burk will save you some little moolah. And yes, Joe Biden is about to be the next president, so if you're needing ammunition supplies or weapons or anything such as that, get it at the link below. Signing up for 99 cents for starters, only $10 a month after that, gets you access to amazing things that liberals right now really don't want you to have. So tell them I sent you. It won't really do any good because there's nobody listening. But anyway, check them down below. And a big thank you to Big Daddy Unlimited for sponsoring this episode. Let's get started. So I'm going to have my handy dandy producer go ahead and run the colors along the bottom of the screen there. We're going to start off with Rhino Red, and then we're going to throw out some backstabbing blue. Oh, that feels amazing. And then finally we're going to top it off with our favorite color, orange. For even through all this, with the results being as they are, aren't you glad that Hillary still ain't our president? That joke is never going to get old. As you can see, I've went ahead and coated my entire canvas in some liquid white privilege because, as you already know, it's going to be the liquid white privilege that takes all of the blame and none of the credit for having the base of this painting. So we're going to start with that, and as you can also see, I've turned my painting horizontal, kind of like how Kamala got to where she is today. But what horizontal really apply to being on one's knees? Doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and start off with some Rhino Red here. There we go, just a little bit. We don't need a lot today, because I mean, even though that we don't have to use a lot, just a little bit. We're going to smear it around by using our little fan brush, because we're going to fan the flames of rhinoism. There's a lot of rhinos out there today, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost like going on a Serengeti safari. Look at all those rhinos just standing around, turning their backs. It's just really interesting to see that. So once we've got our Rhino Red mixed up here, we're going to go ahead and apply it to our base of liquid white privilege. So we're just going to come in and we're going to look at a straight, steady line here. Just a nice, straight, steady line, starting at the edge. And just bring it on over. Nothing special. It's kind of like you can see where the Rhino Red starts here and how it continues to go. And it's almost like it's never going to change its direction, and it's most certainly never going to change its colors. That would be physically impossible, because once you're a rhino, you're always a rhino. Hold on. Excuse me, I gotta sneeze. McCain! McConnell! Oh, excuse me, I don't know where that came from, but I suddenly feel a lot better and slightly betrayed. Weird. So we're gonna make sure that we keep that line nice and steady across the painting here. We're gonna make it a little thick though, because you know, rhinos are a little thick in the head as well. You know, they have some very thick heads. They don't seem to understand what it means to stand for freedom and liberty, but instead stay affiliated to party beliefs, because that's what we do. We're sheep now. It's almost like we're seeing the transition of rhinos turning into sheep. That's incredible to me. You gotta love rhinos out there, kind of like when you're dependent upon to stand for what actual liberty is and to question the authenticity of an election. You just you roll over and you turn your back on the very idea or the premise of saying, hey, why don't we push pause for a second and see if this is worth investigating? Kind of like how the left did for Trump for 4 years with Russian collusion. But we can't do that for an election, because apparently it was the most secure election in the history of elections, yet we saw multiple people receiving ballots for dead relatives that haven't been alive for 20, 30 years. But again, that's another painting we need to do on how to paint like a Democrat. You go to the cemeteries and you vote there. That's the only way to win. All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and use some backstabbing blue here. We're gonna just smear it all over there. A lot of backstabbing going on here. We're gonna go ahead and take this backstabbing blue, and we're gonna start below the red here. We're just gonna kind of mix it up. Don't let it connect. There's gonna be slight separation there. That's what's gonna make you a good artist right there. Don't you just kind of love the idea of how once Congress is convened, Nancy Pelosi gets up there, and the first pressing issue that they want to bring before Congress is saying that we need to pass legislation in the House of Representatives that prevents anybody from using gender-specific language. Yeah, because in this time of economic downturn, the most pressing thing that we need to be concerned about is whether we call somebody a man or a woman, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, or whatever the case may be. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the state of affairs of our country. Congress is debating on whether or not we should call people by what their genitals actually are. I kind of almost wonder what kind of genitals Nancy has there. I mean, to be a moron of that magnitude. No clue, but what I will say is I bet she has a very tight sphincter. So we're gonna go ahead and keep painting this blue and keep running along, but right here we're gonna throw a little sneaky in on you. We're suddenly gonna take this blue and we're just gonna arc it up, going across that red, just a massive uptick. No explanation for it whatsoever. And we're just gonna push it straight up like that, just a straight, beautiful little line like that. Nice, nice, and just like that. Beautiful, happy little arc. Happy little arc upwards. Gotta say, people have been asking me like, hey John, what do you think about the protests in the Capitol? Well, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, random internet follower. I agree with a person's right to peaceably assemble and protest, but I don't agree that you have the right to go in there and push your way into a Capitol while Congress is convening to vote about the outcome of an election, where you have Senator Ted Cruz up there putting forth the idea of like, hey, let's take a 10-day audit just to do a little investigation, because hey, if you're a Democrat and you've got nothing to be worried about, let's do a little investigation, just a little looky-loo. But no, you didn't want that because you knew why. And then you got your turncoats out there that said we have to respect the very sanctity of the Constitution, which I actually do agree with. But at what point do you have to sit there and say, wait a minute, something sneaky going on here we need to look into? I don't think that's unconstitutional whatsoever. I think that should be protected by law, but Congress decided to do what it's going to do, and here we are. Oh boy. Buckle up, folks. 4 years is about to get very interesting. I'll go ahead and even take it a step further. Maybe it's about time the GOP got its cage rattled. Maybe it's about time that we kind of came together and got rid of these antiquated boomer ideologies in the political spectrum and started standing for actual liberty, the separation of church and state, equal rights across the board for everybody, because that's what freedom means. It doesn't give you the right to cherry pick what freedom other people should be allowed to have based upon your political or your religious ideologies. Thomas Jefferson even talked about that, but we seem to forget that part of it. Let's go ahead and continue allowing these young congressmen and women to be pushed into the freshman portion of Congress and get manhandled by the boomer conservatives and get indoctrinated into their viewpoints and essentially just be the same GOP. The same GOP that I see still pushing for big government through the TAPS Act and things such as that, versus saying, hey, it's about time we shrank the government. Maybe we kind of thought about term limits, but that's kind of impossible because once the powerful achieve power, they never strip it away. Kind of like that whole executive order thing. Hey, conservatives, weren't you really happy when Trump was using that executive order left and right like a sword? It's about to come back and bite us in the ass, but I won't say I told you so, but good old Mitch McConnell showing his true colors out there. Might as well just painted him blue too. Another neocon out there in favor of the Patriot Act 2.0 and saying basically, hey, it should be the government's right to spy on the people. But hey, it was the boomers that reelected him, so clearly the boomers know what they're doing. Another idea of stripping away the very freedoms and liberty that Americans have come to take for granted because, hey, let's cash in our safety for security because even Benjamin Franklin will be rolling in his grave right now wondering what the hell is going on in our country. We don't really want freedom. We just want big government, big brother to be overlooking our shoulder no matter what it is that we do and be fiscally responsible for us. So basically we strip away any free choice that we have because we know there's a federal safety net to protect us, even if we choose wrong. Ergo, we do whatever the hell we want. We're no longer a responsible society. We're a society of children. That's what it's turning into. I'm gonna go ahead and thicken this blue line down here, and that nice thick blue line that seems to be kind of wavering with a lot of these police still enforcing these unconstitutional small business shutdowns, man. I tell you what, you sure loved us when we supported you, but to those out there doing the wrong thing, man, you seem to be putting a black eye on this blue. And I know there's a lot of Blue Line supporters out there and Blue Line police officers and officers of the law that are actually doing the right thing. So let me just take a moment to stop, collaborate, and listen. I made a little funny on you there. I do want to take a moment and say thank you to officers of the law that are actually upholding the law and protecting and serving and not enforcing unconstitutional executive orders to force close small businesses. You are the real MVP. All right, so we're going to use our last orange glad that Hillary is not our president. So now we're going to use our orange glad that Hillary isn't president. We're going to use our 1-inch phallic brush here. We're just going to mix a little bit of that up in there. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and do some little downstrokes here. Gotta love how all the people out there saying that Trump was calling for violence during the protests, even though I actually watched the entire thing and not once did he call for any kind of violence. He just said that your right to protest and go to the Capitol and make your voice heard. And then AOC, crazy bartender lady from New York with the crazy eyes, is out there saying Ted Cruz is saying that we're gonna fight on the floor of Congress, which he wasn't being literal. He just meant that he's fighting against legislators wanting to pursue voter fraud and things such as that. But AOC took it literally because honestly, AOC is about as smart as an AOC. That's right, she gets her own category of stupidity. But hey, you elected her. What did it say about your district? The same district that she kicked Amazon out of and cost you potentially 50,000 jobs. And you re-elected her. Way to go. Stupidest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. It's AOC stupid. I know a stupid thing or two because I've seen a stupid thing or two. Mainly AOC. But I do love how they were saying that Trump was calling for violence, yet you got statements being made saying, I don't know why there aren't massive uprisings across the country. Maybe there will be. Well, that's from old Pelosi herself. And nobody said anything about her calling for massive uprisings. Moving on. What about that other crazy lady? Talked about, hey, if you see him in the streets, push back. And she meant literally, Maxine Waters. That's right, the saloon hooker dress lady. Nobody said anything about that. Weird. And we're gonna do the final one here. And then the other statement saying protesters should not let up. And the other one saying protests should be made to make other people feel uncomfortable. Kamala Harris and AOC from them directly. So you don't get to pick and choose when you call for violence and then condemn Trump when he never actually called for it. Protest is covered under the First Amendment. You weren't calling for protests. You were calling for insurrection. The very same thing you're accusing Trump of and his followers, which, by the way, those same protesters, interestingly enough, through facial recognition, many of them, one of them in particular, was a BLM protester. Interesting how that works. So if you're going to demonize an entire group of people that are comprised of Antifa and BLM protesters hidden, maybe you should condemn them all. It's proof, it's true, but you're going to deny it because it goes against your narrative and you're not about truth and facts. You're about a biased, slanted opinion to make the other party look bad. Both sides are guilty of this. Let's go ahead and finish this letter off here with that nice big blue D. Whew. Nice blue. I'm ready to go ahead and squeeze that final little line here. Nice little happy little line. Well, would you look at that? Beautiful little masterpiece. Now, of course, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. What I am saying is that both sides could have came together in the interests of all Americans and said, let's take a 10-day audit and look into this. If there had been nothing there, the right would be satisfied. If there was something there, we could push on from that. But we couldn't have reasonable discussion. We couldn't have rational thinking. Instead, we had to have partisan politics come into play. And ultimately, now we'll never know. But one thing I do caution us is in the future, how can we ever trust our voting process again? How? If the software can be compromised as demonstrated on the floor of Congress when it was literally hacked, how can we then trust it? Mail-in voting, that needs to stop. It needs to be in person with voter ID. And as Congressman Crenshaw suggests, it's up to the states to go in there and pass legislation to ensure that occurs. But my question is, what happens when states don't? California won't. Of course not. They need dead relatives to vote, and illegals. They've called for it. Where are we now, America? This is a scary time to be living in. Democracy hangs in the balance. People no longer trust the voting process. So what are they supposed to do? Who's got the answers? Ugh, I kind of got myself motivated there. My nipples are hard. Weird. So let's go ahead and take ourselves a little bit of protester anger and give this sucker a nice little reveal. Here we go. Oh, that's beautiful. You know what that is? The city of Chaz. All you people out there whining and moaning about the Capitol protests that actually pushed into the Capitol, which I don't agree with. You were quiet when that happened because you said it was their right to do it. So which is it? Pick a side on this one because you look like hypocrites. And let's not even include all the minority businesses that were burned during the BLM protests. The same protests that governors went out and attended. Yet for some reason, COVID wasn't a big deal back then because apparently COVID is racially woke. If you'd like to purchase this beautiful masterpiece here, hit that link down below and make sure you check out Big Daddy Unlimited. A new feature we're adding now is you can text me at this number below and let me know what you think we should paint about next. Make sure to follow me on Parler at John Burk, Instagram at JohnBurk1, and Twitch at TheJohnBurk, where I stream every morning talking about the news and politics and listening to what you, the viewers from both sides, have to say. I'll see y'all later. I will take a moment to add in this statement. Joe Biden is about to be the president, with Kamala Harris as the VP. I disagree with their stances, but I sincerely wish them the best and hope that America thrives under their presidency and vice presidency. I hope they try and do their best to uphold the constitutional laws that give us the freedoms that we have today. I don't think they will, but I certainly hope they try their best to do a good job. Hashtag, not my president. Just kidding, I'm not stupid.